Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 411 from 406. My name is Chewie, and I'm joined once again by my brother from another mother, Mr. Pip. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. It's the highlight of my week. I get to talk to you. It's been a while. It's been a little minute since we've gotten together to shoot the shit about all things unimportant.
Yes.
What's going on with you, sir?
Just, life. Getting, life of a 40-something-year-old guy with three kids. Aging parents. I'm dealing with aging parents. I'm dealing with two high school boys. I'm dealing with a third grader. I'm dealing with an ongoing pandemic. I'm dealing with having to buy another car in the day and age where fucking interest rates are through the roof. All sorts of stuff. So,
yeah, sounds like you're a grown up.
Yeah, it sucks. I was watching a video the other day, and it was one of these it was on TikTok or YouTube or Instagram. It was one of these hold my beer things. And it was just like this collage of like 20-something idiots doing stupid things in college. And I just had such a feeling of nostalgia for a simpler time. You know what I mean? Like where
Yeah.
You could do stupid things and it did, not that it didn't matter, but it didn't matter,
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, those were some of the greatest times. I think about that a lot. I have dreams about that kind of stuff all the time. Just being back in the dorm floors and being able to eat all you wanted, being able to drink all you wanted. Yeah. And you wake up and you do it all again the next day, like it never even happened. And it's just, I was thinking of how humorous I feel like it would be if we recorded this podcast and showed it to ourselves from 20 years ago.
Oh my God.
Sitting on our dorm floor and said, hey, if we got access to this really cool time machine and we went back in time and I found you walking around campus, I'm like, I'm the older version of your roommate and you need to go listen to this because it's fucking hilarious how old we are at this point. And we're still talking and we're still, keeping in touch, but mostly it's interesting the things that we didn't have to worry about in 1994 versus the things that we have to worry about today.
Dude, can you fathom if you were walking across the quad and you ran across us from now walking towards you?
I can only imagine it being a scene out of Back to the Future too, right? Like when they see each other and it's just like, I'm old and I'm young and they all just kind of fucking pass out or whatever. Yeah.
That's funny.
It would be a real trip. I hope somehow we get the ability to do that someday because that would be amazing.
It would be awesome. As a complete side note, do you remember the day OJ got convicted?
I think I know where you're going with this, but I'd like for you to continue.
I can't even remember all the details, but I think it was you, me, and Steve were walking across the quad, and we saw some dude that, and the only thing I can remember was it looked like he was wearing a flower pot on his head. Do you have any recollection of that at all?
I don't.
Steve and I literally were in tears at just making fun of this guy in this like fake British made up voice that we came up with in our head. And he was, oh my God, I'm sorry. It was just, it was a complete non sequitur, but goddamn, it was funny. But it was like those kind of random things that I think about of college that like, that's what I think back to. I couldn't tell you the name of one professor, not one, if I had to.
I could think of a couple of them.
But... Okay, I could not. Who was the teacher that we had on Thursday nights? It was one time a week that we both had the same class. Was it a science class or a music class or something? And we always had to skip IU basketball games.
Well, we had a chemistry class together, and it was like a 3-hour class on a Monday night. Was that it?
Maybe that's what it was. Yeah.
Oh,
wow. That guy did not like us.
Yeah, well, that's probably true, and probably fair to say that we felt the same way, but it was mutual. But speaking of our friend Steve, and my favorite memory that comes to mind specific to the time of OJ was when Steve put in the window of his dorm floor, "Free OJ." And like, so he wrote it out in individual 8x11.5 pieces of paper with one big letter on each paper. So he taped each one up there. And I remember, and I'm pretty sure it was you, I remember walking by that and seeing on the quad and like, how fucking great would it be if we went up there with a couple extra pieces of paper and made it say "free blowjobs," and and had somebody go up to his room. And I'm so mad that we never did that, because that would have been amazing. But Steve was a character. He's a great dude, and I hope someday he listens to these podcasts, because hopefully he'll get a little nostalgia too.
My greatest memory of Steve was the, I don't know, year or year and a half when we got into the LPBA. I think it was Thursday night, we would watch ladies professional bowling, and
for reasons.
For reasons. And it was appointment television, and we got so into it, and we developed our favorites, and we developed these storylines, and we loved Tish Johnson. She was this, if you've never seen, and I'm sure you haven't, Tish Johnson, please Google her, because she is the perfect, like, when you think of ladies bowler, you think of Tish Johnson, right?
Oh yeah, you probably could put that picture in your head, it sounds like. I remember you stole a pair of bowling shoes for me from your class, and I wore those things for a solid year at least, and I love those. They did wonders to my back to walk around in those things all the time. But man, those like fake suede or whatever they were, the front half of the shoe was half gray and the other half was blue, and then the back of it was red, and it was great. I loved it.
That was, God, when was that? Was that, it was either freshman year or was it freshman year?
That was absolutely freshman year.
Was it?
Well, actually, now that you say that, I don't know. I don't remember when you took bowling, but I want to say it was probably freshman year. Maybe second semester.
I think you're probably right. I remember I took racquetball my freshman year, and I'm pretty sure I took bowling my freshman year too.
Oh, I remember, because that's when we bonded, because I would always swing by your room because I was taking Taekwondo. And I think we would go together because we would go to the hyper, right? And I will never forget, I have this visualization of you sitting in your room, and you're putting your contacts in, and you take your contacts out of the case, and you just squirt the contact solution all over it, and it just like drenches all over the floor, right? Like, you didn't even care. You weren't even trying to, like, we didn't have bathrooms or sinks in our room. So you would just like spray it and drench it and then put it in your eye. And it was like, nobody gave any fucks about what those dorm rooms looked like or smelled like or any of that. And I would just sit there and wait for you to get ready, because I think I was the one that woke you up, and you'd answer in your underwear and walk back to your to bed and sit down and just, kind of get yourself together.
That sounds about right.
I do have those memories.
Not too terribly long ago, I was telling my boys about Dave Zakatansky, and about how he would walk to the shower just completely nude, with zero fucks to give, carrying his shower caddy, and just walk around and just not care at all. And they could not fathom the idea that we didn't have bathrooms in our dorms. They were just like, wait, what?
Oh, in the rooms. Yeah.
They just couldn't fathom that.
Oh yeah.
You had to go to
bathrooms, community showers.
Yeah. They could not fathom that at all. So I don't know. Lord knows what college will be like by the time our children go. I'm sure, it'll be way more expensive than it was, but
at least 4x the price it was. Yeah.
So what's going on in your world? Anything good other than adulting?
Well, there's plenty of adulting. Work is pretty busy right now, going through review season, so doing a little traveling. I'm looking forward to get spring break coming up, so that's pretty fun. I'm not looking forward to the fact that it's over WrestleMania again. So this will be 2 straight years. I can't remember the last time we had 2 straight years where we didn't have WrestleMania together. We've gone a couple one-offs where we didn't get a chance to hang out, but this might be the first time ever, I don't know, that we haven't had 2 straight.
Since we've been doing it, I don't even think, I mean, if you don't count the pandemic, there might have been 2 years where we watched it virtually, but maybe not. I don't know. I'd have to go back and
I don't know.
I think probably since we started. It's been a while. So what? So it's a good segue. What do you first of all, are you up? Are you following? And what do you think about kind of heading into WrestleMania? We still got what? Not quite a month.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, we've got about a month to go. I think it's going to be a really good show. I think it's going to lean towards the same sort of theme that last year was, which is just like wall to wall entertainment. Because I think we're going to have some really good matches. I think we're going to see the culmination of a lot of storylines that we've been waiting to see finish, with Roman Reigns going up against Cody Rhodes. I'm pretty sure, we haven't heard it officially yet, but we're going to see Kevin Owens team up with Sami Zayn to go after the Bloodlines tag belts. I think we're going to see Rey Mysterio and Dominic go after each other. It seems like they're just really, they also just announced Trish Stratus is back to wrestle with Becky Lynch and Lita, who are the current women's tag champions, to go against Damage Control. So, I mean, I feel like they're really pulling out all the stops, which is what they should do. And that's great. Yeah. And I think it's going to be a good show. I don't know that it's going to be oh, and John Cena's back, which I love.
Yes.
I think that's fucking great.
Yes.
I get that probably whoever's listening to this is probably not a huge wrestling fan, but last Raw, which was this past Monday night, was incredible. John Cena comes out and cuts this promo on Austin Theory, and it is just absolutely fire. It was so good. And it made me think, Jesus Christ, where's John Cena? Like, why isn't he more a part of this world? Because it's funny, he's been away for so long, but he has not lost a step, and it was so good. And I know he's not going to be able to wrestle like he used to, but I don't even care. Like, just having him there as a presence is enough to make me tune in for sure.
I have been a mark for John Cena, I mean, for years and years and years, even when it was not like, it was super uncool to like John Cena. But seeing him come back, you're right. I mean, he's I don't know, he's got to be 60 pounds lighter than he was, and he's starting to bald, but goddamn, he's still so good. And like when he walked out onto that stage and he heard the roar of the crowd, right? And he was even talking to the camera, and he was like, you gotta be here to believe. It was just really cool.
Yeah.
And it really kind of makes me sad, because like when you think about, there's not going to be that many, at least for me.
Yes.
There's not that many more years where I'm going to be able to experience something like that, because there's not a wrestler that I'm going to be that invested in. And that, you know what I mean? Like that I'm going to care for that long. And again, it's not that I don't like the current product, because I do. Yeah. But like once the John Cena's of the world, and I'll even put maybe Roman Reigns and maybe Kevin Owens, like, and Randy Orton, like once those guys go away, I fear that I'm going to kind of be to the age. So what, I'm in my mid 40s right now. Once those guys go away, what, I'm going to be in my early to mid 50s. You figure at the latest.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't feel like I'm going to get ever again like that nostalgia pop for Austin Theory or you know what I mean, like, or Sheamus, or, and again, that's not to say that those guys aren't great, but I'm just at a different stage of my life. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, I think when you talk about John Cena that way, it makes me think a lot about Hulk Hogan, because I feel like John Cena, in a sense, is the second coming of Hulk Hogan.
Absolutely.
And that he is the ultimate babyface. He's the ultimate good guy. That, people didn't hate on Hulk Hogan the same way they hated on John Cena, but that's because the product and the business and the culture really changed a lot from the Legends era to, where, Ruthless Aggression and on through the John Cena years. And I think that in some way, the crowd gave John Cena a lot of shit. I mean, a lot of shit. And he endured through that somehow and just took it and wore it as a badge. And everybody loved him for it. Like they don't chant Cena sucks anymore. Or if they do it ironically, because nobody hates John Cena anymore. They just don't. And so I understand what you're saying, because I don't see in the current product or the current generation the next version of that. And I think that there will be that. I don't know that it will be for us, because we will have been past our prime as fans, I think, of wrestling. But
I'm in my prime.
Exactly. Doc Holliday. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where it goes, but I do agree. I think there's an element of sadness to it because it feels like we we have obviously lost the legend generation, right? Like those guys can't get in the ring, they can't compete. They're all pretty old. A lot of them have died, and now we're getting to the point where Triple H is gone, The Rock is gone, Hogan is gone, which I guess he's legend, but he kind of stuck around a little bit longer. But then you've got Brock Lesnar, who's part-time at best, and John Cena is pretty much gone. I mean, the next generation of the guys that we really cared about are walking out the door.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, I don't think I'm going to feel that way about Roman Reigns. I mean, I really respect the guy, but I'm not really going to miss him in that same way that I would. I don't think he's created the same memories. I don't think, well, this is definitely arguable. I don't know that he changed the business the same way that Hogan did. I don't know that he changed the business the same way that Cena did. I think he's done a lot, but I don't think he changed it. I don't think he revolutionized it.
No, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think, so if you look at where the wrestling business was when Hulk Hogan was coming up versus where he left the business, and then you contrast that with where the business was when, say, Roman Reigns started and where he's going to leave it, the reality is that the leaps and bounds that the wrestling business made from at the beginning of Hogan's run, right, where it was basically a group of indie territories that Vince consolidated into the World Wrestling Federation, largely on the backs of guys like Hogan and Sheik and Piper and those guys, right? Well, when Roman came in, it was already the World Wrestling Federation, or it was already a publicly traded company, this huge
billion dollar
company,
multi-billion dollar.
And so it's not even necessarily like Roman's quote unquote fault, right? It's just so much more difficult to move the needle
exactly
that behemoth at that point, right?
Because it is so huge right now,
right?
And they don't get enough credit for how huge they are. I mean, they sell out all these shows, insane houses. I mean, again, we talked about it the last time we chatted about Sami Zayn when they were in Canada and how insane that crowd was for him.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's just crazy. And it's like, how do you take it to the next level? What could the next level even be?
There's been rumors and innuendos about the WWE is up for sale, or they're going to take it, no longer being publicly traded. I don't know what that looks like. I haven't heard a whole lot recently. My gut tells me that if they're going to take it private again, it's probably going to go to some kind of like Saudi investment group. I'm just thinking about like who has the wherewithal and the money to do something like that. It's got to be a conglomerate group like that, right? I would think.
That's a good question. I don't know. And I don't know what that means for the future of the business if that happens, right? I mean, does that mean all the women are going to have to wear, neck to foot, like, outfits and stuff like that? I mean, when they go wrestle overseas in Saudi Arabia, they're not allowed to show skin. And that's a big part of the product and how it's advertised today. And I can't imagine it would be the same. Now, of course, I don't think that would make good business sense. So hopefully anybody who would invest in that wouldn't make that dramatic of a change. But I mean, it's hard to say. I have no idea. I think a lot of that's just fodder for fake news online, but
I'm sure. Yeah, I think you're probably right. I don't know. I do have to say, so there was a time where Vince went away, like for reasons, right? He had some legal troubles, and we even talked about it on the podcast. In fact, we had an entire episode where we talked about kind of the future of the WWE without Vince McMahon, and of course now he's back.
In some capacity,
right? And this is going to sound weird coming on the heels of a conversation where we were just talking about how excited we are for WrestleMania season and how good Raw was and those kind of things. But I personally get this feeling like when I heard Vince was back and involved in creative again, I was bummed.
Yeah.
Like I looked at that as a negative thing. And again, it's a subjective thing, so it's not a right or wrong. But like, am I the only one? I don't think I'm the only one that's feeling that.
Oh, I absolutely felt that way. It felt like kind of a punch in the gut because Triple H was breathing so much fresh air into the product and what was going on. And he clearly was making some tonal shifts that were very different from what Vince was doing. He brought back a handful of players that Vince basically said goodbye to, Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt. I mean, and there's a handful of others. So I am of the mind at this point that Vince is not the one that is best suited to exert creative control over this product anymore. I think Hunter has more respect amongst the talent. And I think the fans are more interested in him being so in tune with what they want to see that it's going to be better if it stays with him. So I don't know if Vince is really involved in the creative again. Again, the dirt sheets are all really hard to take at face value. So I think as long as the shows stay good, then I guess I don't really know, or I don't really care, but we'll see what happens.
And that's a really good point, because even though I have this feeling of like sadness or disappointment that Vince is quote unquote back, I will say that has not been reflected in the product. Like what I've seen has been really, really good. Now, I don't know if that means that like that is the tail end of what Triple H has been doing, and then like Vince's shit is going to take over and it's going to be bad again. I don't know. Yeah. But to your point, like it's my quote unquote bad feelings about Vince have not been reflected in the product. And I just hope and pray that it won't, what I perceive as a negative won't rub off on the WrestleMania weekend. You know what I mean? While we were talking here, I just pulled up, this is eWrestling News, and they have six current, what they consider official WrestleMania matches that have, I don't know if these have been announced or what have you. So they've got the undisputed WWE Universal Championship of Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes. They've got the SmackDown Women's Championship match of Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley, which I think will be awesome.
Might be the match of the night.
It very well may be. The Raw Women's Championship, Bianca Belair versus Asuka. Mm-hmm. United States Championship match, Austin Theory versus John Cena. And I want to come back to that one and get your thoughts in a minute.
Yeah.
Brock Lesnar versus Omos, that's the Vince match. That's the like two big guy, like
fast forward.
That's gonna be terrible.
Yes. Fast forward.
Hold, exactly.
Yeah. Unless Brock drives another fucking tractor out to the ring, I'm not interested in any of it.
Right. And then the match you mentioned earlier, Becky, Lita, and Trish versus Damage Control, which like, God, I love Trish. I've always loved Trish. Like she's just, and I love Becky.
She is our age, by the way. Trish is our age.
Is she really?
Actually, she's a year older.
She looks remarkable, so much better than I do.
she's taken good care of herself.
It's not even funny. Okay, so back to Austin Theory, John Cena. So, and as far as I know, that on Monday night was the first interaction that they have had. Is that correct? Like that was the first time we'd seen John Cena back. So I think that was the first time that they had like interact. Like I guess my point, there was no history there, was there?
I'd have to think about that. I want to say that they have had some history. I don't know that I don't think they've wrestled, obviously, but I think that they've maybe had a few back and forths in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, this is that segment was incredible, and I'm really, really excited for the match. I think it's going to be good.
So if there was history there, I'm not familiar with it, but I don't think it necessarily matters for the purposes of this conversation. So John Cena comes out. He is clearly the aggressor there in that I'll call it a diatribe, or that quote unquote back and forth. It wasn't really a back and forth because Austin Theory just like got murdered in the middle of the ring audibly. I don't think they even touched one another. My question to you is, right now, today, on March 9th, a month out, who wins that match?
100% Austin Theory. He wins that match. He has to, because the only way that I see it going in different ways, if they decide they want to put a belt on John Cena one more time to give him that would be his 17th championship. Would that put him above, or is that 17th world championship?
That's world. So this one that wouldn't count. No. Okay. It wouldn't get him there.
Okay. So no, absolutely not. As much as the entire crowd wants it, John Cena is probably, and I'm hypothesizing here, but I think he's probably one of the most stand-up guys next to Taker that has ever been in that ring. And I don't think for a second John Cena's ego would carry him to the point where he would need to come back just to win that match. It just wouldn't happen. There's no reason for him to win that match. He would absolutely come back under the stipulation that he gets to put Austin Theory over, because he understands, like Taker understands, that on your way out, you give back to somebody else what you were given.
Yeah.
You do the job. Exactly. So no, I mean, I'm almost willing to put my highest confidence
that's your 14
point.
That's your 14
that might
point
be
match. Yeah.
That might be it, because it makes no sense to do that. Now, I got to be honest, if I lost that 14 points, I would love to be wrong, because I just love John Cena. But what do? They bring him back, they put it on him for a night, have him lose it at Raw, or have him give it up or something. Like, there's no real good way to do that. And I don't think he's coming back to wrestle even for, from now until SummerSlam. Like, I don't think they're going to do that. So I think he's perfectly happy to go in there and do the job. That's my take on it right now. But what do you think? Am I off?
No, I don't think you're off. But I think there is value in getting John Cena one more title run so that he is above Ric Flair. Now, the addition that I will make to that is, I'm not suggesting that John Cena is a better wrestler than Ric Flair. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, you can't really make that argument. Yeah.
No, you can't. But I guess what I'm saying is, in WWE world, I would think my perception of Vince is that Vince would want a WWE guy, i.e. Triple H or Hulk Hogan or Roman Reigns or John Cena, to hold the quote unquote title of most championships versus a quote unquote WCW guy like Ric Flair. Does that make sense? Like,
it does, but right now it's tied, right?
Right now
they both
tied.
have 16, so it's easy. 16, right? It's easy to keep it that way and make everybody happy, right?
Right.
So
the flip side to that is, if Triple H is in charge, I think Triple H probably has more reverence for the overall history of the business, and by extension would have more quote unquote reverence for Flair than he would Cena. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Possibly, but I also want to think that he may realize, when the dust settles, having two people with the same number of champions is better for business. I think
it might be,
in my opinion, because then you get people arguing and making the point. When there's no one clear standout, it's best for business, because that means everybody's arguing and talking about it and making their point. So I kind of think that having the one golden goose, I don't think it's that much of a benefit to profits. I don't know.
Okay. So I'm gonna go off and on off ramp here. We can come back to the wrestling. That's fine. But you triggered something. Okay. So LeBron James, not too terribly long ago, became the all-time leading scorer in the NBA.
Yeah.
That has reignited the conversation of who is the best ever, the GOAT in basketball.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, like, John Cena versus Ric Flair. This, who's the GOAT in basketball? Is there, or can we still have that conversation? Because I have a very specific answer, but I want to get your answer.
I mean, it really all depends on what your definition of success is. I think if you're asking me, I have a hard time saying it's not Michael Jordan. I really do, because I honestly think that winning championships is harder than anything. I mean, being the all-time leading scorer of the league is by no means an easy feat. But I feel like if you play well consistently long enough, then you do set yourself up for that success. But I think winning championships says so much more about your contribution to a team that it's for me personally, I considered a more impressive statistic. So I think the guy that goes down, and I want to be clear, like are there guys, well, I mean, the sad thing is that guys like Bill Russell aren't even entering this conversation, and he's got more than both of those guys, right? Bill Russell, I think he has at least 8, right? If people forgot that the Celtics back in the 50s or 60s won 8 straight championships, 8 straight, not like the Bulls who won 6 total. The Celtics won 8 straight. They were unbelievably dominant back then. And it's too easy to just push them aside and say, well, that was a different time. There's no way Bill Russell back in the day could compete with LeBron James today. And that's probably fair. I would say that that's probably accurate too, but it's also not anything that you can ever prove. But for my money, Michael Jordan was the best because he took his team and he elevated them to something bigger and something better. And LeBron has done that, but I don't think he has done that consistently like Michael Jordan has. That's one guy's opinion. And I don't really stay super in tune with the NBA as much these days. So it's harder for me to be a credible resource for that. But what say you?
I echo almost everything that you said exactly. Michael Jordan is the GOAT. Michael Jordan is still the GOAT. And I'm a huge LeBron fan. You know, LeBron was a hometown guy for many years. He brought us our one and only title in the last 1,000 years. My oldest son and I have this conversation pretty regularly about who is the GOAT in basketball. In my eyes, it's Michael Jordan.
Call me when LeBron has 6 championships.
Is that your only argument?
It's the only argument I need, Sean.
I'm not going to echo what you just said, but yes, it's still Michael. I did look it up while you were talking. Bill Russell has 11 rings.
And 11. Nobody has said a fucking word about Bill Russell.
I know. It's crazy.
Come on, people. Yeah. Like, I get it. You know, it's a long time ago, and it's before those games were heavily televised and before people were having shoe deals and video games and all that stuff. Yeah. But man, like, that's impressive. Like, that's just incredible.
8 in a row and 11 overall. Now, all of that being said, and it pains me to say it, the GOAT of all GOATs is Tom Brady.
It's true.
And
100%.
It kills me to say that, but it's absolutely true. Yeah.
It is. I mean, it has to be, because he's just, nobody has done what he does. And we both know that he's retiring, even though he could play probably another 2 or 3 years. If he really wanted to, he could. Yeah,
oh, absolutely he could. Yeah. Now, is he going to win championships? Well, that really kind of depends on his team, right? The team around him. But no, he would absolutely, I think, has probably 3 or 4 or 5 more years of being a top 3rd NFL quarterback.
Oh,
easy,
for sure.
In my opinion.
Yeah, he could absolutely do that. But that's one sport that it's undeniable. Like, there is nobody in the argument. Basketball, you can argue. Baseball, I feel like you could probably argue. I mean, I'm sure
baseball. Yeah, baseball is so, you know, it's
got so much more
pitcher.
Of a history. Yeah. And because of the way the game's designed, to your point, I think it's harder to make that argument. But I mean, yeah, baseball, I mean, is it Hank Aaron? Is it Babe Ruth? Is it, you know, Jim Thome? Who is it, you know?
Right.
But
he's my favorite. I don't think
I know who your
I appreciate that. You know, how about hockey? There's kind of 2 names in hockey. It's like it's Gordie Howe and it's Wayne Gretzky, right?
Yeah, I think for me it's Gretzky, but I'm severely unqualified when it comes to hockey.
Yeah, me
too.
Too.
Or you could make the case for maybe, I don't know, Yager. I don't know if he's
Lemieux
Lemieux. Lemieux's probably what I should have said, but I don't know. I mean, if it wasn't back in the 90s, I don't remember, because I played hockey on.
I'm sure we'll get
NHL 94.
We'll get all sorts of comments. What about this guy? You know, like when it comes to hockey, I don't know.
Hockey's the one on ice, right?
I think so. I don't know. Let's see. While we're doing GOATs, we talked about football. We talked about baseball, basketball. Clearly, Tish Johnson is the GOAT of LPBA.
Yeah.
We touched on her earlier. Soccer is the one. Who's the guy that just hung him up in the World Cup? Won the.
I mean, you got Ronaldo, you got Beckham.
Is that who it was? I don't even know.
I don't know. I don't watch soccer or
Pele. He's a big name.
Oh, Pele. Yeah, he just died, didn't he?
He did. Yes.
Yeah, that's really sad. I remember he was the first like internationally known soccer star. I think at least international to the United States, because
Right.
we're the
Right.
last country to really adopt giving a shit about soccer.
How about boxing? We're really getting on my wheelhouse. Is it
It's got to be
Ali?
Muhammad Ali.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say,
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it depends on. I bet if you fantasy matched it, I bet Tyson at his prime would have wasted Ali. I don't know.
God.
I think he really would have.
Dude, some of those Tyson matches back in the 80s and 90s, dude, he just like would eat iron bars to get to his opponent. It was crazy.
It was insane
watching that dude.
That dude was an absolute monster.
Speaking of Tyson, I'm coming back to wrestling. Tyson has a podcast, and it's called like, I don't know, something pot related. It's like High Times or something like that. But the Undertaker was just on it the other day.
I think I think I saw a clip, and I couldn't believe it was that Mike Tyson has a podcast. But
right. I think it's really cool that Taker, now that he's retired, you start to see him pop up. Like, you're starting to see him do these interviews, which I think is really, really cool, especially since kind of he's one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah. Well, he does like these one-man shows or something, right? Like, doesn't he actually tour on some kind of I don't know if it's a Q&A or some kind of presentation that he does, but yeah, he's got like a thing that he kind of travels with.
Anyways, let's see. Obviously, we don't really have a topic for tonight. And we were chatting before we started recording. I kind of like that. I kind of like these episodes where we just kind of shoot the shit.
Yeah, it's fun. And I like it sort of unscripted like that, because it gives us an opportunity to kind of bounce all around. So we talked about wrestling, which is obviously a topic near and dear to our hearts. But what about TV watching? Have you seen any? What shows are you invested in at this point? Or are you engaged in anything? Watching anything?
You know what? Not really. The only show on TV that I'm even remotely invested in, Mandalorian.
Yeah.
I watched the first episode of season 3, which I thought was great. I know that as we're recording this on March 9th, I think the second episode of season 3 is out already, and I have not seen it yet. The only other thing that I watch with any sort of regularity, I watch a show on Netflix with my wife called Emily in Paris. And
okay.
And I'm
familiar. I have not seen it though.
And it's a show that we can watch together. It's I guess it's the best way I can describe it. It's like it's a Sex and the City for the 2020s. It's like, you know who Emily is? Emily is actually Phil Collins, the singer's daughter. That's who Emily is.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's a fun show. It's essentially kind of a fish out of water story. She's a marketing executive in Chicago. She moves to Paris, doesn't know the language, and hilarity ensues. So,
did you not to stray too far off topic, but did you by chance see there's a skit on Saturday Night Live with Peyton Manning? Peyton Manning pops on the Weekend Update segment, and they keep trying to ask him football questions, and he keeps diverting to watching Emily in Paris, and he's like,
no, did he really?
It's really, really funny. You got to watch it. It's hilarious. I haven't seen the show, so I don't get any of the references, but the fact that Peyton is continuously like steering the conversation back to that show when it's obviously something that
that's really funny.
He wouldn't watch. It's really good. Put
That's
that on
funny.
your next to watch list.
Speaking of Peyton, when you watch Thursday Night Football, are you watching the Manning cast? Or
No.
are you watching just football?
No, I typically, if I'm watching Thursday Night Football, which to this day I still forget exists sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't watch that. I don't know if it's any good or not. Maybe it is. It probably is, but I haven't. Yeah,
all I see clips of it on YouTube. I've never sat down and watched an entire episode of them. So what? How about yourself? Are you invested in anything? Are you watch anything these days?
Yeah, a couple shows. So I'm tearing through the show Succession on HBO, which I really like. It took me a little while to catch on. It was one of those shows that I would always catch a couple minutes of a specific episode deep into a random season when I would travel and, turn on the TV on the road, and that would be what's on HBO. And I'm like, oh, this looks kind of interesting. So I finally started it from the beginning. The 4th, and I think the final season is getting ready to premiere here in a couple weeks. So I'm watching that, which is really good. I feel like, well, there's a couple actors of note. Brian Cox, who is in Super Troopers, and he was in the X-Men, one of the X-Men movies. And great actor. He's sort of, I guess it's, if I understand correctly, the show is loosely based off of Rupert Murdoch and his, because it's focused around this media conglomerate and his children and how he uses them and pits them all against each other. And it's really interesting. And Alan Ruck, who is Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, he is in this show as well. He's one of Brian Cox's children, and Kieran Culkin as well.
Okay.
And it's great. It's a fun show. It's very interesting. I shouldn't say it's fun. It's not fun, but it's pretty interestingly corrupt, I guess, is what I would say in terms of the moral bankruptcy of the people and the characters. But that's pretty good. But I'm also really excited about The Last of Us. I've been watching that on HBO too. We've spoken about it on this podcast. It's one of my absolute favorite games of all time. Came out on the PlayStation a handful of years ago, maybe around, I don't know, 2015, I'm going to guess. Maybe not quite that long. And they had a sequel, and the story is just really phenomenal. And they made it into a series. And the guy who wrote the game is also writing the series on HBO, which I feel like is not particularly common for video game adaptations. Mm-hmm. And it's really good. And he uses a lot of his own stuff in terms of like there will be scenes in the show that he word for word replicates from the dialogue from the game, and it works really well. And the casting is pretty good. I really like it, but the show overall I think is really solid. And I know that you haven't seen it. I kind of hoped that you would, just because I know you're a big Walking Dead fan, and I'm just curious to know whether this scratches all the zombie itches that you might have, or is this sort of after Walking Dead just kind of like, yeah, whatever, like it's okay, but the story isn't really that interesting. But obviously you have to see it first.
Yeah, I have heard nothing but good things about that show. I haven't seen it. I haven't played the game. I guess my question would be, if I were going to go and enter into that world, do I play the game? Do I watch the show? Do I do them both? Like, as somebody that's familiar with the franchise at this point, and you really love the game, like what's better? If I'm going to jump in, what's better?
Well, it's kind of a tough call. I guess what I would say to you, talking to you specifically, I would say the movie, just because I know the game is going to be hard for you to invest the time in, because it's not going to be easy, because it's a long game. It's going to take quite a few hours to get through. But I'd say the show does a really good job of consolidating all the really important story and plot lines of what the game represents. So I would say just watch that. And if you really like that story, then play the game. But I mean, the thing that's really great about the game is the story. Like, there's nothing particularly revolutionary about the gameplay. It's really more, it's the first game that I played that I was playing the game and felt like I was watching a movie at the same time. It was just really compelling. So the story is what the meat of everything is around The Last of Us. So I would say you're probably good with just watching the show.
Okay. Is that something that the wife would watch or no? I don't know her, so
probably not. I'm going to say probably not. I don't know if it would. I mean, it's not overly gory. It's more of a drama than anything else. It's not a super gory show. It's really more of a post-apocalyptic kind of drama.
Okay.
And so I don't know. Maybe have her watch the first episode. I mean, she'll probably get a good feel for what that's going to be. But,
okay. And it's Pedro Pascal, the Mandalorian, right?
Yeah, Pedro Pascal is the main guy, and Bella Ramsey, both of them who are in Game of Thrones. She plays Ellie. And yeah, it's just a really great story about their journey together, which I don't want to talk too much about, because if you haven't seen it, there's some spoiler type stuff. But yeah, I think it's really good.
So I was not a Game of Thrones guy. What was Pedro Pascal in Game of Thrones?
He was
a main character?
No, he was not a main
Oh,
character.
okay.
That was
Okay.
the first
Okay.
thing. No, I'm sorry. That's not the first thing. The first thing I ever saw him in was Narcos, I believe, on
Okay.
Netflix.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if you ever saw that. It was fucking amazing. Narcos was about the story of Pablo Escobar and how he came to power and all the craziness and the empire that he built around drugs. And Pedro Pascal played Javier Pena, who is one of the undercover agents that worked with the American government to try to take him down. And man, it was real. Wow, what a good show that was. That was one of the first shows I think on Netflix that I watched that was, I believe, produced by Netflix that just absolutely hooked me. Like, goddamn, that was a good show.
Okay.
So good. But anyways, yeah. So Pedro Pascal, he's everywhere these days, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Last of Us, and of course, Mandalorian is back. I did see the first episode. I thought it was okay. I mean, I'm just kind of like waiting to see what we're doing and where it's going and what's happening. But I enjoyed it. See what Star Wars looks like without the Skywalker family.
Yeah. I read a headline today that, and again, I don't know if it's true, but it was a headline that Mace Windu was confirmed to be back in either a Mando episode or a Book of Boba episode coming in the future, which I think would be really cool.
I'm on the
think would be
fence.
really cool.
I'm on the fence. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, how many people that we thought were dead can they bring back? Like, it's and how old would he be at that point? Like, because
he would
you'd
be
have to
old.
take how old he was at the time of his death, which was how many years before Star Wars? 5?
Well, let's see.
Revenge of the Sith was how many years before A New Hope? Or no, it had to be way more than that because Luke is what, 16, 18 in New Hope?
Yeah, so it's call it 10 or 15 years, right? At the least.
Oh yeah, at least. And this is after Jedi, right? Mandalorian takes place 5 years after Jedi. So we're talking
Correct.
we're talking however
30
old
years.
Mace
Probably 30
was
years.
and add 20 to 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly possible, but
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see where it goes. We'll see what happens. But what about any movies? Have you been to the theater at all?
Dude, I haven't been, I think, because I did not see Halloween
That's right.
Ends in the theater. I saw it at home. I think, and this is a really good unintended segue, I think the last movie I saw in the theater was Scream 5.
Okay.
And
all right.
Scream 6 comes out like
tonight. Yeah, it's out tonight. Yeah.
And I am fucking pumped. I cannot wait to see that movie.
Are you up for Scream Takes Manhattan? Is that are you looking forward to that?
I really am.
Okay.
I really am, because I really enjoyed Scream 5. Now, I will say and I have there was a couple 3 or 4 weeks ago, there was a couple days where I don't know if it was the killer or a video or what, like it was leaked. If something was leaked, and I didn't watch it, so I don't know, and I don't know if they have changed it since then. But a couple initial things that I have read have not been overly positive. But I genuinely don't care. Like I'm all in. I cannot wait to see that movie.
Okay. Well,
and I don't really care if it gets spoiled from, you know what I mean? Like for me, it's the Scream movies are not really about, at least after the first one, we're not really about the whodunit. It was more of like how they navigate and how they get to, at least for me.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because for me, I felt like it was always the whodunit. And
was it?
After the first movie, it got progressively less interesting because I felt like they stopped really taking chances. And that's not to say that I didn't like Scream 5 because I thought it was good. I mean, I thought it was fine. I didn't really think it moved the needle that much, but I thought Scream 4 and Scream 5 were kind of on the same level with each other.
Yeah.
Like both of them were serviceable. Both of them had parts that I really enjoyed, but ultimately they were kind of forgettable. Like I think I saw each of them once all the way through and haven't revisited them. And again, not because I didn't like them, but just because it didn't really change anything.
Okay.
And I like them both better than Scream 2 and Scream 3. I thought those were both kind of crappy. Well, Scream 2 was it's kind of okay. Scream 3
Right.
I thought was terrible. I thought that was I hated it. I did not care for it at all. But I just can't help shake this trigger that I get when I see that Scream 6 is coming out, but Nev Campbell is not going to be in it. Like,
Sure.
I want to be clear. Like, I don't necessarily love her character or feel like she has anything left to do in this series, but it's triggering in that it feels like a series that has lost its lead star. And when that happens, it's like, well, that must be a sign that I don't need to see this movie. And that might be wrong, because I actually read a review that loved this movie. I read IGN's review, and they gave it a 9, and they said it was absolutely on par, if not a little better than Scream 5. But I read that and I thought, well, what did I think of Scream 5? Did I like it enough to want to carry on? Because obviously they bring back a lot of the characters, a lot of the newer characters from Scream 5, Jenna Ortega, and the rest of I don't honestly remember the names of anybody else.
She's the only name that I know. Yeah.
And we know Courtney Cox is in this. I have to assume maybe she dies. I don't know, but I have to think that that's a possibility, if not a probability. But if they don't take a chance with who the killer is, then I think the whole movie is a waste of time.
Sure.
Like, I don't think it's going to be Nev Campbell, right? Because she's not in the movie.
Right.
I don't think it's going to be Courtney Cox. Maybe it's Jenna Ortega. I doubt it. I don't know. But I mean, like, the problem is that when they film a new movie, a new Scream movie, and the killer of the movie ends up being a new character, it's just boring to me.
Yeah.
It's a cheap cop out. It's lazy storytelling. It's somebody's mom who we didn't know ever existed, and somebody had a brother and we didn't know, and it's just like, that's bullshit. Like, that's cheating. Like, it's not. That's soap opera television right there.
I would agree with you, but I would also point out that, like, every single Scream sequel has been that.
Yeah. Right.
They've literally all been, right? So Scream 2 was Mickey and
Billy Loomis's mom.
Billy's mom, right? Scream 3 was a unknown brother that we didn't know about, right? Roman, what's his name, or half brother?
Yeah, Sidney's half brother.
Scream 4 was Scream 4.
It was her cousin. It was Sidney's cousin,
which we didn't know until that movie. Scream 5 was. Oh, it was some boyfriend. And
it was Jack Quaid.
Yeah.
And
there was two of them, though.
The crazy girl.
Oh, yeah, they were like, so again, Scream 6. Hayden Panettiere is back. It could be her, but that wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense.
I forgot she even lived from the fourth movie.
Well,
I didn't think she did.
It was not. Here's when it was confirmed. It wasn't confirmed until
it was a drop line in the fifth movie. That's right.
The drop line in the fifth movie.
Yeah,
right?
I did read that. Yeah.
And actually, if you go back, and I never would have caught it, but there was. Do you watch a show called Dead Meat? It's on YouTube. You would love it, dude. It's called Dead Meat, and what he does is he goes through your favorite horror movies and he recounts all the kills, and he shows you all the kills and he counts them up. It's amazing. But so this guy, him and his girlfriend, or I think wife, they made a cameo in Scream 5. And if you look on like that screen, one of the suggested videos is a video of whatever Hayden Panettiere's character, what's her name?
Kirby.
Kirby. It says Kirby, whatever her name is, survivor of Woodsboro. So like they confirmed it there as well. Uh-huh. And again, they didn't point it out. Scream 4, I really enjoyed because I thought the franchise was gone, right?
Yeah.
I think that was 11 years afterwards. And it was new and it was fresh, and they brought back some characters. Scream 5 I enjoyed because they took a chance. They killed Dewey. Spoiler alert, they killed Dewey, and they killed him really brutally.
Yeah. which was good. Like they
It was
needed
great.
to do something.
Yes.
That was my whole beef, is that these movies weren't taking chances. They were
Yes.
introducing new characters. The new
Yes.
characters ended up being the killers, but nobody that we knew or loved was either dying or guilty of anything. And it was like, fuck it, it's boring. Like, I already know who's gonna
Right.
live and who's gonna die, and I don't care.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
so,
I agree. That was a step in the right direction, which is why I have to think that Courtney Cox is going to bite it in this one.
yeah. So, I mean, that leaves you with, I think, the legacy characters that you have at this point. You got Courtney Cox, you got Hayden Panettiere. Who else do you got? I mean, I suppose if you're going to consider the Jenna Ortega class, like that were introduced in the last movie, I suppose they're legacy characters at this point. Everybody else from the originals are dead. The only one that we haven't brought back is Stu.
Yeah.
If he's alive. I would have liked to have seen him in the last movie, quite frankly, but we didn't get him. So
it wouldn't surprise
me
me if they did bring him back, to be honest, just because
he's the only one left, right? He's the only one.
Well, because it's such a big fan fiction, thing that's going around the internet, is for, people who really love the Scream series. It's like, well, we never saw Stewie die. And they've interviewed Matthew Lillard before, and he said, well, I don't know, if they wanted me back, I'd come back, and I'm sure they would do that. So I have to think that at some point someone's going to say, look, we are out of gas on this tank of for Scream. Let's just throw a fucking Hail Mary. Let's pull him back. Let's have Sydney come back. Like, let's give her whatever she wanted. I don't know why Neve Campbell didn't appear in this movie, if it was a financial thing or if it was just like, hey, I'm done. But I guarantee they could talk her into one more movie where she either fucking dies or just kills everybody or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I think that there's just, it's tough when they keep recycling the bad guy. I think that's a challenge that I haven't been able to overcome yet. And again, I like it. I mean, it's fine. There's nothing offensive about it, but it's like, we're just kind of going through these motions over and over, and it's not taking enough chances for me to be engaged.
Sure. The last thought that I'll leave you with for Scream kind of if they continue with this new cast, right? The Jenna Ortega, that group. This franchise kind of reminds me of Fast and the Furious a little bit.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about that too.
Well, I am too, but in that, like, the Fast and the Furious to me is two different franchises, right? You get the first 3 or 4 where it was Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, kind of the gang, the family dynamic, right? And then they expand to the, like, Jason Statham, The Rock, like that it's just a different franchise.
John Cena, Charlize Theron,
right?
Yeah.
And again, it's not bad, but it's just drastically, like, if you go back and you watch those first 2 movies and then you watch the last 3, it's like you wouldn't even think they're in the same universe.
Yeah,
with the exception of Dominic Toretto, right?
Sure.
So yeah, and I guess what we don't have in Scream is Sydney anymore. So I don't know.
Or for this movie, at least, I fully believe she'll be back. If they make a Scream 7, she will absolutely be back.
You think so? Okay,
absolutely.
Well, I saw a tweet or something today that Scream 7 is already greenlit. So
doesn't surprise me.
We'll see. Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
What else you got? Anything else? We've been bullshitting here for an hour and I don't know, an hour and a half.
Well, we've talked about movies, TV, and wrestling, and I think music's the only thing we haven't touched on. And one little plug I wanted to throw out there, and I'm not sure if you heard this, and you won't be as excited as I will probably, but they announced for Record Store Day. So there's Record Store Day is a day that they have twice a year where artists will ship limited edition copies of something, to record stores that have to be bought in person at the store. You can't order them online, any of that stuff. So like they'll send like 5,000 copies out of a version of a new album that's never been released, or a live album that's never been released, or a remastered version of another album with like a color variant, like, because records can come in different colors and not all just black anymore. And for the first time, we finally got confirmation that Van Halen is releasing the Sammy Hagar era on vinyl in a remastered fashion. And and weirdly enough, and I don't fucking know why. The first one that they're putting out is the Live Right Here, Right Now album.
Really?
Yes,
Wow.
that is the first one that's hitting vinyl, and it's hitting vinyl on Record Store Day. Now, that album will most certainly be available for purchase online and on the internet everywhere else. But the thing that makes it special is that there is a color variant. The actual vinyl records themselves will be red. So
that's cool.
And that album has never been released on vinyl because obviously that came out in the early 90s when vinyl as a format was all but dead. And yeah, for whatever reason, this is the first one that they're putting out there. And what makes it kind of cool is that they're putting the two B-sides from the singles, the live version of Eagles Fly and the live version of
Give to Live?
Well, no, Give to Live was on the original album, if you remember.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
The other one was a song called The Dream Is Over off of For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge.
Yeah.
Those are both being added on to this album as part of the package. It's expensive. It's kind of ridiculously expensive for what it is, but it's 4 LPs. So it's about $100, which is kind of crazy, but it's I'm really excited about it. And I'm just more so excited by the fact that this means the Sammy Hagar era Van Halen records are finally getting remastered, which is long overdue. I don't think they're getting remixed, which I would really like to see, but if they're at least getting remastered and getting released on vinyl again, I think that's a great step forward.
So I'm completely ignorant when we start talking music. What's the difference between remastering and remixing?
So remastering is hard to explain, but it's basically when they take the completed like the tapes or whatever, and they enhance the sound quality to make it cleaner and louder and make it pop a little bit more. Remixing is a totally different process. That's when they go back to the original mix of the album. You know, when an album is recorded, and most people I think know this, you know, they put drums on one track, they put bass on another track, they put all the individual instruments on different tracks, and then the guy behind the mixing board or the producer or the mixer, whatever, like he adjusts all the levels so you can hear different things at different levels. So when you remix an album, that might be going back to the masters and saying, well, I want to hear more bass. Like I want to hear the same exact song, but I want to hear more bass. I want to hear the bass was dropped out of the mix. And that's actually a very common criticism of OU812 as far as the tape and the CD and all that, is that you can't hardly hear Michael Anthony on that album at all from a bass playing perspective. Like the low end is virtually not even there. So sometimes they will remix an album and they'll take that and they'll bump up that bass, or they'll make the guitar louder, or maybe they'll take the vocals and shrink them back a little bit because they were too overwhelming in the original mix they got, you know, put out many years ago. So that's kind of the difference between remastering and remixing. And remixing is a lot more involved. My guess is that they're not going to do that with this series of records. Maybe they'll do it at some point, but they are going to remaster them. They're going to sound great when you hear them again. And I'm really excited because they haven't been touched since. So like Dave's albums have been remastered and re-released multiple times in the last 20 years, probably. The only time that any of Sammy's songs have gotten touched is the Greatest Hits album that came out in like 2004, before they got back together with him and did a one-off tour.
Yep.
The Sammy songs that got put on that Greatest Hits album got remastered, but that's it. They never released a remastered version of 5150, OU812, Fuck, or Balance. And so it sounds like they're finally getting ready to go back and do that, which we were all sort of assuming that it would be Wolfgang that would have to go back and do that, and he would be in charge of those remasters. I don't know if that's what's happening right now. Rhino Records is putting out these remasters, and I think Rhino has some sort of relationship with Warner Brothers, so it's legit. You know, it's not like a knockoff or anything like that. But I'm just happy that they're finally coming out. Being a vinyl collector these days, I can't wait to hear what these records sound like on vinyl, and maybe, just maybe, they'll add something to the original albums. Sure. You know, maybe a track that we haven't heard, or a live version of something that's never been released, you know, extra material. Sure. That's exciting.
So how do you, as an audiophile, so you've got your love for music where you clearly are passionate about listening to records on vinyl. how do you in your mind deal with, I want the convenience of Spotify versus the experience of listening on to something on vinyl? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like in your how does that work? What in your because again, to me, like I haven't bought a physical piece of media music in probably 10 years.
Yeah.
At the 15.
Yeah.
I can tell you what album it was. It was Passenger. It was all the little things by Passenger. It was the last CD I bought. But like literally everything that I listen to is just either on Spotify or iTunes Music. We have a family for Apple Music. Like so, like as an example, this stuff, all this vinyl stuff. Can you hear the difference of a vinyl recording when you're listening to it digitally, or do you have to play it on a turntable to get the true experience of listening to it on vinyl?
That's a great question, and one that I don't know that I could answer very well because I don't consider myself an audiophile. The reason that I have a record player is because I'm a collector. Like I like to collect things. And much like you, because I know you've got a collection of certain toys and posters and autographs and things like that. The thing that I like to collect is music, and specifically these days it's vinyl. And the reason that I do that, and the albums that I specifically target, are ones that either I love the album front to back, because when you put a record on, you're pretty much committing to listening to the record. And being an old school music fan, that's a very romantic concept to me. I don't like the idea of hitting play on a song and then skipping it right away and then moving to a different artist in 3 seconds. Like I like the experience of listening to a complete work of art from beginning to end. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is that I just like to support the artists by buying the physical media, because our bands like this group called The Midnight that I listen to, that I feel like I've talked to you about. They play kind of like a poppy synthesizer music, and it's very sort of throwback to the 80s and stuff, and I love it. And I want those guys to get my money. I want them to get it directly. So I will buy their vinyl off their online store and have them ship it to me. And I feel better at the end of the day because I've given them my money for that versus just streaming it. So the streaming thing is definitely a convenience when I'm in the car and I want to listen to that same kind of music. But like when I want to sit down and I really want to absorb it, and I want to, hang out with my kids and give them the experience of unfolding a cardboard sleeve and looking at liner notes and seeing pictures and helping them understand that when an album was created when I was a kid, there's much more than just what you hear. It is an entire experience. It's the sights, it's the smell, it's all of it put together. And it's sort of the romanticism of all of that I really enjoy. So no, I'm not an audiophile. Yes, you can hear audio differences, but it depends on what you're buying, because some albums are made for vinyl, some albums that were created 30, 40 years ago, but like the newer ones really weren't. So it's not quite the same, but it does sound a little different, but that's not the reason that I listen to it. I just like the experience of putting on music and committing to it.
So I'm intrigued now. Let's take commuting out of the equation. From you're in your car. Let's take that out of the equation. Are you sitting down and actively like putting on an album and saying, okay, I'm going to listen to this album? Or are you kind of passively listening where you put an album on and you're doing other things and you're going about your life? Like, what does that look like? And again, obviously it's not always the same, but like, what does that look like to you though?
Well, to be honest, it's both. Yeah. I sit down. It depends on the situation and the album and the mood and all that stuff. Sometimes I'll be playing a board game with my kids in the office, and that's where my record player is. And I'll let them choose a record. Like, what do you want to listen to? And so it becomes sort of a family experience, and they get more invested in it because they had a say in it. But sometimes when I buy a record, and most of the time, again, I buy records that I've already heard. I don't typically buy brand new ones. Sometimes I do. That Midnight group that I was just talking to you about, every time they put something out, I'll just buy it sight unseen because I just really love those guys. But most of the time I'm buying older records to listen to. And sometimes when time permits, and it's not always, I will take the opportunity to just sit down and listen to the music. And to me, it's, dedicate myself to the music. I'm not doing anything else. I'm sitting there. I've got the liner notes in front of me. I've got the sleeve in front of me, and I'm just trying to absorb it. And to me, it's about as close to a spiritual experience as I get, because it takes me back. And it sort of puts me in the shoes of a kid who was listening to that stuff the same exact way, 30, 40 years ago or 50 years ago, whatever it might be. And I just feel like that's the way that music is meant to be listened to. And I don't have any problems with digital music. I listen to Spotify at work all day long. But when I really want to absorb myself and try to understand, the lyrics and the messaging and the production and all of that stuff, that's when I try to retreat to my record player, when it really forces me to not be distracted by anything else and not have the ability to skip, but to even listen to the bad songs or the songs that I don't like as much, because they're all part of a bigger story.
It's interesting to me because as much as I really, really enjoy music, I don't enjoy it on the same level that you do. And that bums me out, right? It bums me out because what it does is it shows me that I got too much going on in my life. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, seriously, like there's always a phone, or there's a this, or there's a that, or you know what I mean? Like I can't tell you the last time that I sat down and I listened, like literally just listened to an album, like nothing else, no phone, no screen, nothing else going on. No, just I can't. I mean, it was probably in college. You know what I mean? Like, and it was probably Thick as a Brick by Jethro Tull, which I know you laugh at me, but I still to this day is one of my top 5 albums. I love that album. It's a 43-minute just masterpiece in my mind. But no, that's interesting to me, that like I'm fascinated by. I've been thinking. I don't know if I'm going through a midlife crisis, but I've been thinking a lot about like how I experience things, how I read, how I listen to things, like how I consume. I've been thinking a lot about that.
Okay.
I'm sick of this. I'm sick of the phone. Right.
Yeah.
I'm becoming more and more in tune to. Like I want to pick up a book and sit down and read a book.
Yeah.
I want, you know what I mean? Like I want to sit down and watch a movie, not an episodic you know what I mean? Like
yes. It's too much. It's like it's just oversaturation. And that's why a record to me is perfect, because I don't need a phone. I don't need anything. I just sit down and I hit play and I let it tell me where it's going to take me.
Yeah.
And admittedly, I don't do that all the time. It's not like I do that 6 times a week or anything. It's a when time permits thing, and time is a precious commodity as we get older. But I tell you, man, if you really love the music the way that you say you do, it's worth the time. It's worth taking the time that you have and just saying, you know what, I need 45 minutes so I can listen to some Jethro Tull, because that's what I want to do. And I really honestly think if you can find a way to do that, you will hear it in a different way. Like not necessarily different instruments or anything like that, but like it just hits you differently. Because I know, I mean, you were a big fan of that in college, and I'd be interested to hear how something like that resonates with you today, because it's your different set of ears you're using.
Oh, I'm a different person.
Exactly.
I'm like I'm a different person. I mean, than I was. God, what is that?
1994.
We graduated in 98.
Almost. It's almost 30. It's 25 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll leave you with this. How do I, as somebody who is and we could talk about this off the podcast too, but like, where do I go as a 40-something-year-old guy who's way too busy with life? Where do I go to find new music? And the reason, and before you answer, I still listen to the same shit today that I listened to 25 years ago. Like, if you could go through my Spotify and my playlists and my Apple iTunes and whatever, it's still all It's live. It's Van Halen. It's Stone Temple Pilots. It's Pink Floyd. It's James Taylor. It's Indigo. Like, it's the same shit that I've been listening to for 30 years. And don't get me wrong, I love that music. And again, I'm asking out of pure ignorance, how do I find something new to listen to?
That's a tough question, because I've had the same challenge, and I don't, I have satellite radio like I know you do, and I rarely make it to the stations that would play something like that. I don't even know what those are, because I listen to Hair Nation, and I listen to Tom Petty Radio, and I listen to all things that I know pretty much every song they're going to play when they play it. For me personally, the places where I discover new music, and when I say new music, I don't necessarily mean music that was created recently. I mean, maybe in some cases, music that was created decades ago that I just never heard before. Yeah, I get it from TV. I get it from movies. I get it from the shows that I watch on like Netflix and HBO and whatever. And sometimes I'll hear something, I'm like, what is that? Like, that's something, it's fresh to me, it's new to me. And then I'll look into it. And it's sort of, it's interesting, because then my brain sort of pins it to the memory of that show. And so it's still kind of new, even though it's old, if that makes any sense at all. So, I mean, my recommendation to you is, like, I don't think there's a radio station that's going to be your answer, because if I turn on a radio station that's playing new music, maybe one or two of those songs would be cool and I'd want to listen to it more, but like 90% of it would be shit to me. Like, I wouldn't, it's not my thing. It's not my vibe. So I would say just be hyper aware of, some of the television or some of the streaming shows and some of the movies that you're watching. And if you hear something, take note, figure out what that song is and figure out if it leads you to something even more interesting down the road. That's how I find it these days. Or I mean, occasionally someone will recommend something, but for the most part, that's how I stumble on shit.
I appreciate that. That's good advice. I will say I've had some relatively decent luck with like creating a channel on Spotify or Apple Music, or like pick a song that I like, and then you can click the create channel button.
Yeah.
I ran across I was at a neighbor's house, I don't know, probably 6 months ago, and he's a huge Pearl Jam fan. Mm-hmm. And so I think we were listening to like the Eddie Vedder channel, and that led me to 2 or 3 songs that to your point, I had never heard before, that were probably 20 years old, but they were Vedder tunes that I was just like, oh my God, like that's an amazing song.
Yeah.
And I think this one, the one that I really, really enjoyed, was from a movie. Again, that was like 18 years old or whatever, but
I think that if you're interested in that kind of stuff, my understanding, and it's been a while, is that Pandora has a much better algorithm for that kind of thing. Like Spotify for me is real hit and miss, because Spotify radio, if I say I want to hear songs by Journey, it'll play Don't Stop Believin', and it'll play Pour Some Sugar on Me, and it'll play Dr. Feelgood,
stuff you already like,
stuff it knows that I already like, but it's like A-list shit. So like if I want to listen to Journey, I'll go listen to Journey. But if I want to listen to songs that are like Journey, I sort of hope that they'll play more obscure shit that I don't know, even if it's Journey and it's obscure, or if it's a band that sounds like them that I don't know. I don't think Spotify's quite there with how they program that, with their radio stations. But Pandora, from what I understand, is much more in tune and much smarter about that. And that's another service and another subscription and all that stuff. But I think that it's going to lead you down a path that will probably open your perspective to a lot of what you're looking for, if that makes sense.
It does. And on that note, this has been a really fun episode of the podcast, my friend.
That's awesome. I loved it.
I guess to wrap everything up, I really enjoy these like kind of shoot the shit episodes. These are great. That's not to say that we're not going to do the deep dive stuff. We can certainly do that. I have a feeling we probably got some wrestling coming up in the future here with WrestleMania and those kind of things. Yep. But I'm really enjoying this too. So I appreciate you jumping on with me. Believe me, I just love shooting the shit with you too. So. Yeah.
It's my favorite part of the week, man.
Right. All right. That being said, that's Mr. Pip. I'm Chewie, and this has been the 411 from 406. We'll talk to you soon.
Adios.
Bye.